broadcasting live from unknown remote locations and not their parents' basements. It's B2B Tonight with Ryan O'Hara and John Mazza, featuring Shikha Bindra, Senior Manager of Market Development at DocuSign, and Sarah Brazier, Account Executive at Gong. And now, everybody welcome our host, Ryan O'Hara.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to B2B Tonight. I'm obviously super professional today, coming to you from not a basement. This is definitely not a sketchy building. Look over there, it's John Mazza. What's up, John Mazza? Why are you wearing a turtleneck?
Hey, I am coming from a basement, so I sketchy people wear blazers and turtlenecks, I guess.
I feel like we have to start like LeadIQ Poets Corner or something, and you're gonna I gotta hit the bongos. And you're gonna read some stuff to us.
I think that sounds like an amazing idea, and probably a future bit that we're gonna do.
Oh, it will happen at some point. So we've got a stacked lineup today. A bunch of stuff to go over. Some house cleaning stuff. This is being recorded. Hint, hint. Person that's running our Zoom, hit the record button if you didn't yet. You like that? If you want to ask us any questions, all you have to do is ask in Zoom. We have someone relaying it back to us so we can jump in. But where are you guys from? Jump into the chat and say some stuff if you want. Tell me a cool sales story, maybe in chat. Talk about like the last objection you got or something. We can play around with that stuff. But we're gonna jump into some stuff here today and focus on talking about what it's like to sell at a unicorn company. Mazza, do you know what a unicorn is?
I do. It's a horse with a horn, and it jumps over rainbows and pots of gold and stuff.
Well, in a business sense, Mazza, the kids.
Oh.
Do you know what the kids call the unicorns? You know what defines it?
Yeah, it's one of those those billion-dollar valuation companies. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, we're talking about companies that go to market, impress a ton of people, do amazing things. And we thought we'd kind of get two sides of the coin today. So we'll be talking with Sarah Brazier, saying her name correctly, because I've botched it for years and I'm a jerk. And Shikha Bindra from DocuSign. And we're going to talk to them. Sarah's from Gong. They're kind of in two different phases because Gong's like getting to that unicorn status now. They're growing their horn. And DocuSign's publicly traded in a behemoth. And if you don't use DocuSign, holy crap, I can't believe you've never used DocuSign before. Like, what's wrong with you? But we'll be talking with those guys. Before we do that, though, little backstory here. So the past couple of weeks with COVID kind of winding down and people getting vaccinated, being able to see each other, we actually have been tasked with, we just launched a new website on LeadIQ. So if you go to leadiq.com, you can see our website just got redone. One of the things that we were tasked with was making a new explainer video to try and explain what LeadIQ is. We were trying to think of some fun, crazy stuff. So we took the camera out and tried to make an explainer video. I don't know if we're going to use this, but let's see what came out with the results. You want to see it, Mazza?
Oh, yes. I'm incredibly excited about this.
I just want to let you know that
we had a lot of fun.
We're not as douchey as it comes across in this. Let's play it.
You see that dumpster right there? I used to live in that dumpster. Now I own this whole lot.
I used to live under these docks. Now I own 24 boats. I thought I spelled success.
Yeah, I was just parking my yacht at your dock.
Hey, so people have been asking me, how did you get so successful?
How did I get so successful? I started using LeadIQ.
LeadIQ? What's that?
You know LeadIQ. It's been scientifically proven to save your sales team's time.
Oh yeah! Before I bought LeadIQ, I was a dummy. I had to go find the account in Salesforce, look for the prospect online, try and get their contact information, create the record in Salesforce, get the contact information, manually put all the stuff in, push it into my sales tools, go back on LinkedIn and research, add them into my sales engagement tool, and put them into a sequence. At that point, I'm ready to just blast off a template. I don't have time to personalize. I gotta move on to the next account.
With LeadIQ, you can eliminate busy work. In one click, you can send a prospect off LinkedIn into your sales tools faster than this bad Larry.
LeadIQ also gets you prospect data and is smart enough to detect duplicates in all your sales tools, making collaborating with your team as easy as the 900 I just did.
LeadIQ allows me to focus on those high-value activities, like making money.
Look at how easy this is. Find your account on LinkedIn, narrow it down to your prospects, and hit capture.
With fully enriched contact data, he just got sucked into Salesforce, my sales engagement sequence, and into my heart. Dearest Conan, I love you and have longed to have your company for a discovery call.
And just like that, if you want to improve your pipeline, be better at prospecting, and focus on those high-value activities, LeadIQ will make you prospect smarter. Right, guys?
Right.
Wow.
That was emotional.
We should get fired. I think we're due. It's time.
Well, that's the first time anybody's seen it in public, so we probably will. I mean,
what you guys?
It's been nice working with you.
Yeah, it was great. I'm sure that we'll get out of this show today, and we'll talk with people and find out that oh yeah, pack your things. Here's a box. Go. Let's jump to the show today, right? Also, the sweat was super gross. I think that wasn't really sweat. I don't really have that bad of a problem with sweating. Let's jump to the show. So we're going to talk and kind of dissect and get some value now and stuff, and talk about working at a unicorn company, some cool best practices for calling, emailing, all that stuff. And we thought, who better than the person that won our Sales Madness challenge that we did back in April. We were trying to do it in March, but it was too last second. But we had Sarah Brazier on. What's up, Sarah?
Oh, hey guys. Not too much.
I'm kind of, I can't believe we've never done anything before. I'm upset that we haven't done anything. This is it.
I know, it's great.
So for people that don't follow you, you're maybe one of the best content producers online when it comes to making stuff in the sales world, putting personality into it, and all that jazz. One of the things that I love about Gong and the people that work there is you guys have a lot of great people that are allowed to build your own brand online and stuff. I think it's been a big part of Gong turning into a unicorn, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Gong just does a really good job of creating great content, and people get excited and inspired and write really great content too. So, yeah, I think that we've had a lot of organic growth just from people posting really awesome tips on sales and selling better, and it's all been good and gravy.
How do you, so you've been doing this stuff for a long time. How do you weave it? By the way, if people have questions for Sarah, I should have said this. Jump in chat and ask something, and we'll relay it back, and we'll ask her the question. We'll splice it in naturally, and it'll look like I'm a good journalist. So how do you splice in the stuff that you do online, Sarah, with helping you sell? Could you go into that a little bit? You put a great post up with that's something that's really insightful. Do you do anything with the people that engage with that post? What happens?
Yeah. So I think the motion's pretty simple. So before I even started posting content on LinkedIn, at the time, our head of content marketing, Chris Orlob, was posting a lot. And I think if people have been on LinkedIn a lot and been digesting content, then you know Chris Orlob's name. So what Chris would do is when he would post on LinkedIn, the whole SDR team, and I was part of the SDR team when there was about 10 of us. Now there's 50 or 60 or a million. I don't even know how many. But when he would post, we'd all be like, oh, Chris just posted. And that would be awesome to prospect from. So I just go through anyone who liked his post or commented on his post and connect with them on LinkedIn and start a conversation, or add them into a sequence if they were the right title. And so when I started posting on LinkedIn, I do the same thing. I just look at who's engaging with my posts and start conversations around whatever it is that we were talking about. And then if it made sense, I'd see if they were interested in evaluating Gong. And then, from there, just having a consistently posting, having a brand, having people come in and look at my profile and, be introduced to the content that I'm producing, then introduces them to Gong. And then I've almost created this tiny little inbound channel for myself where people DM me saying hey, it's time for us to start evaluating. Could you connect me to the right person, or are you the right person? And then I've got this own channel where I can then prospect from people just hitting me up there. So yeah, that's how I'm doing it.
So one of the things that it's almost like you create your own little inbound channel. Do you do nurturing too? Is that kind of how you handle stuff?
In what way? Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So let's say you have named accounts, right, Sarah? At Gong, you guys get a list of accounts that are named in your name, and that's it.
Yeah.
One of those people says, "Hey, Sarah, we're not ready. We're in a contract with someone else," or "Hey, Sarah, we're not ready. We're changing leadership, or we don't have budget or something."
Mhm.
You add them on LinkedIn. They see your content over and over again. Is that sort of like a way that you stay in front of your prospects a little bit by having them get into that funnel a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that that's part of it. Because I've listened to calls where people have said, we we weren't ready to evaluate Gong when it first came across our radar, but I've been following Sarah's content, and it just felt like now is a better time. So yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, it's like any kind of advertising. It's any kind of top of funnel thing where you want to be in front of in front of your potential buyers, your prospects, and timing is just you know sales is all about, like, you need to have pain and need and urgency equals timing, and sometimes those things don't happen at the same time. And then budget, but we'll get to budget at some point. So yeah, like, just staying in front of your prospects as much as possible, so that um when they think, man, I wish I had more visibility, or we need some kind of way to capture conversations or manage pipeline better, um then Gong is the first thing that comes to mind, not something else.
So one of my favorite things about like following your content and why I started following your content in the first place is because you speak like my brain works, or you write like that. So like it comes across to that, like when you're writing out your post, I'm like, wow, that's all the stuff that's going through my head while you're writing something. When you do post content and stuff like that on LinkedIn, like, is it usually in the moment, or do you plan some of the stuff that you're writing out, or kind of how does that work for you?
It's definitely in the moment. And I feel like lately I've been sort of inconsistent in posting because it ebbs and flows with what's happening in my life and what's happening in the field, and do I have the bandwidth and emotional energy to try to articulate what's going on in a way that's interesting for other people to read. But yeah, I mean, my routine when I was an SDR and I first started posting, there's just more flexibility in your schedule. You have a little bit more space for creative thinking. So my routine was just like, go to work, make my coffee, make my goals list, dive into cold calls, and then once I'd finished doing my cold calls for the day, it would be creeping up around lunchtime, and so I would give myself 30 minutes to write a post, and then I'd prospect from that post that afternoon. Um, and it would be like whatever was top of mind for me as an SDR, which is, it's everything from getting hung up on or yelled at on a cold call to, man, like, what? Stop managing my KPIs, man.
I got a question for you. Do you guys do anything to track that stuff? Like, one of the things that we always are curious about with, like, because I follow Devin. I've followed. It's funny. I have a picture of Chris at a conference falling asleep. Like, we were at the end of the day after the end of the conference. We're in the hotel lobby and we're all just hanging around talking and sitting. I think you were there too. And Chris is just in a chair like this. And I took a picture of him. I have it saved whenever he calls me. Like, if he ever calls me, I have him on my phone saved to that picture. But do you guys do anything to track, like, your interactions, even though, like, because, like, the people that engage with your stuff aren't necessarily always your territory or your account? Like, do you do anything with that? Like, what's the circumstances for that stuff?
Like on my LinkedIn, or are you talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah. Like,
Okay.
does Gong even do you guys just look at it as like awareness and that's kind of the play, or do you think, like, I put this post up, I should go look at every person engaged with it and tell the rep that's working that account that someone engaged with my content? Like, is there anything that you guys do like that? Honestly, it's probably hard to do with your job, right?
Yeah, I mean, my job is an account executive. I'm closing deals. So when I was an SDR, I would definitely, when I was prospecting myself off of my posts, which I did a lot more as an SDR, I'd totally go hit up, um, whoever owned that account if it was, especially if it was really juicy, like, oh my gosh, the VP of global sales from this huge enterprise account that we've been trying to break into for 6 months commented on my post. Yeah, of course I'll send that to the SDR. But now, I don't do that. If other people want to do that, go for it. But
Yeah, yeah. Like, it's almost like you could technically, if you wanted to, get like someone like Jared or someone on the SDR team to go, like, they could go hunt through your post, look for the engagement, and be like, hey, can I mention you? They can just mention your post. They don't even have to check with you. Like,
yeah,
it's actually a great step for prospecting. Let's say I see that you like Sarah's post and I work at Gong and I want to prospect. I might write an email or do a call and say, hey, blah, blah, I saw you like Sarah's post about XYZ. Want to see if we could talk for a second. Is that cool?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
now you have a trigger, right?
Yeah, you should do that with any influencer on LinkedIn, like influencer, whatever you want to call it. But like, if you think about like Ryan, you could post something and it could be relevant to coaching reps to be better. Well, that's a value prop of Gong. So I'm going to go say, hey, you liked Ryan's post about coaching reps. Did you know that Gong helps you do that more efficiently? Like if you don't have a list of people that you actively follow and go check out what they're posting, and it doesn't have to be from your company, it could be from anywhere. If your prospects are on LinkedIn and engage on LinkedIn and ingest that content, you should make that into part of your prospecting play. If you're an SDR out there thinking of new ways you can get in front of leads.
I know when I was an SDR, at the same time as Jeremy over here, I used to mention Jeremy's posts and then steal meetings from him, basically off of his posts. So it definitely works, and I'd suggest doing it.
I like how you're suggesting thieving. Yeah, be a jerk. Well,
thank you, Jeremy.
At that point, Jeremy, I'm sure was an AE too, right? Like when you're doing a lot of stuff.
No, it was when we were both SDRs, but
he can't keep up.
And I was coming back.
Yeah. That's why you wore the turtleneck.
Commented on Jeremy's post.
Yeah, you're wearing the black turtleneck so you could like be a cat burglar and basically grabbing some weed. I'm just kidding. So Sarah, Gong obviously embraces a culture of doing that. Do you guys think it's been a huge part of I think it's a big factor in why Gong's been so successful. The other thing is it creates a culture where you as a rep are giving more than taking in the community, right?
Yeah, it definitely creates. I mean, yes, there's like two parts to your question. Does it help Gong? Absolutely. It's I think that it definitely helps us continue to build our brand and organically grow our customer base. All the stuff that I'm reading about how people buy and why they buy, it's like something like 53% of buyers today would rather just go to the website and buy the product instead of ever having to engage with a salesperson. And if you can make that, so they're making their decisions based off of their community and the people that are around them and people that they trust. So if you have a really great brand and you are a trusted expert on the specific thing that you talk about and the problems that you solve, like that's what I think makes Gong's content and brand so good, is we don't really say like, oh, revenue intelligence, this is really great and you need it and this is why it's awesome. We're talking about the challenges of selling, and we just write a lot of great content about like these are common experiences that sellers experience, and here are ways that you can be better at overcoming these challenges. And people go, wow, this actually helped me sell better. So then they go, I wonder what this product is. Oh, wow, it's going to help you even more. And then they buy it. So yeah, I think that's like the content and continuing to do that organically is really impactful to Gong's brand. And then in terms of just being a salesperson is not being the smartest person in the room. It is being trustworthy and empathetic and coming up with creative solutions to your prospects' problems. And if you can create, I can't remember if it's logos, ethos, or pathos, but if you can do that, I think it's pathos. If you can have that credibility as a salesperson at scale with something like a personal brand on LinkedIn, that definitely helps when you actually sit down in front of that prospect. Because again, like buyers, most of the time if you're getting to interface with them, especially if they've come inbound, like they're that close to the finish line most of the time.
What I'm sorry, Maz, were you going to say something?
Yeah. So how often, I know you're sorry about that. I know you're an account executive right now. Prospecting is probably not on the forefront, but how often do you actually prospect now as an account executive, and like what are some of the things that you're doing to get in front of customers or potential customers in other ways other than prospecting, like staying in front of people?
Yeah, I still prospect every week. I mean, I need to have a pipeline. So yeah, so I'm prospecting every week. Some weeks it's like, I made 5 cold calls, and some weeks it's like I made 100 or 50 or whatever. How am I staying in front of? Are you asking like how I'm staying in front of people in my pipeline, or how I'm staying in front of people?
Yeah, people in your pipeline. Like, is there anything like out of the ordinary that you might do, or things that you found like that you're doing more of a routine to stay in front of people that might not necessarily, that are kind of early on in the pipeline stage, the stage in your pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the basics is always like what helps you close more deals and continue to drive pipe, and hopefully, win more. But I mean, setting next steps on calls. First of all, like in your qualification or discovery call, you just need to figure out if it's an opportunity or not. And if it's not, that's fine. Like, great, shake hands, part ways friends. And so as like a good AE, or the best AEs that I know, they just qualify out faster. And if there's nothing there, then there's nothing there, and you move on. And if there's something there, then you set a clear next step with a firm future commitment. That's Sandler selling, right? It's like, cool, we have synergy. You said this is a problem. You said that it's going to be X, Y, or Z amount of dollars it back into your pocket if you solve it, or it's going to, free up X amount of time, or whatever the solving the pain does. You just re-articulate that, and then you ask for the next step, and then you actually put it on the calendar. And if you have it on the calendar, then they're probably going to show up if you did a good job in discovery. And if you didn't, well, then on to the next. And that's why you keep prospecting, because just keep filling up that pipe, filling up those opportunities.
How much does Gong's data that you guys collect totally, how much does that give you an advantage in selling? Like, do you guys so when Chris or Devin or you or anyone there puts out some sort of report on like some metrics and some stuff, like I've seen so many talks at conferences from you guys that like I'm like scribbling down in my notes that if anyone saw it, they probably think I'm like going insane. Do you like, what are some things that you do on calls that you've learned from like data you've seen in some of the research reports you guys have done?
Yeah, I mean, so much. I use we use Gong at Gong to make Gong better. So, a lot of the research that we put out there is very based off of, like our entire analyzing the top 10% sellers within our current client base. And so it's like more B2B SaaS. The thing that's awesome about Gong is that you can get really deep on, I don't really care what everybody else in SaaS is doing. I care about what we do to get better. And so you can go really deep on your own company. So that means that I'm looking at like our company. Gong can do things like look at something as simple as multi-threading. We can go back and analyze the past 100 deals that have taken place and say, hey, based off of data, the ideal number of prospects to have in a deal is actually 4, and that increases your or the stakeholders in a deal is actually 4, and that increases your likelihood to win by 7x. So if you want to increase your win rates, then you need to get multi-threaded, and here's the data to back it up. And then you go, okay, cool, that's going to help me sell more. So how do I get wide this account? Or one thing that I did is Gong literally showed me that the reason I was losing so many deals is because I wasn't at power, and using that data to then change my talk track and model my talk track off of top performers who are better at getting power into their deal earlier on, stuff like that. So it's like convoluted.
Can we break that down a little bit? So power, let's talk about getting power into deals. Are you talking about like getting the right authority involved in it, getting the right decision maker, or is it more of you having power to mobilize through the deal and stuff?
No, okay. So I'm talking about like earlier on when, I mean, we've just met my 1-year anniversary as an account executive. So I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just a sales rep trying to get better. So early on in my deals, I would trust that whoever I was talking to, when they said that they were the person who was going to ultimately make the decision, I would blindly trust that, the happy years of a rep. And what I learned after losing some deals that I shouldn't have lost was that I need to be at power, the person who ultimately is the economic buyer or the ultimate decision maker. Sometimes those two things are the same in commercial. Sometimes those two things are different, but I need to be at the ultimate decision maker. So I implemented into my talk track something super simple. Hey, when your company buys software, what does that process look like? Then they lay it out for me. Well, I'm ultimately the person who's going to make the decision, but I actually have to go to my VP of sales to get the budget. Okay, great. So can you tell me what that process looks like? Why would, in what world would your VP of sales say no? If you were to, what are the reasons why this deal wouldn't close? And then from there, you can create a case to say, hey, you really want the software, right? I really want to sell it to you. If you think that, we have to get your VP brought on, would it make sense for me to partner with you on that conversation? Because I promise I won't make you look bad. And then you can get that person involved in the deal. And the earlier, like for me, the earlier I can get in front of, example, the VP of sales or the CRO, the more likely I am going to be able to attach myself to higher value, mission critical aspects of whatever that company is trying to achieve, versus if I'm too far down the totem pole, it becomes really tactical, and you can't justify a purchase off of like a very tactical, simple thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And you're working the deal, navigating through this to figure it out. I think that question, if you're listening to this, a big takeaway is that question you asked about like what happens when you usually buy stuff like this. What was the last time you bought a vendor? Who did you have to get involved? Is a great question. I love that. It allows you to loop people in. How are people ever hesitant? Like, I don't want to do that yet. Like, are they kind of like, oh man, let's just keep talking first before we do that? Like, what happens when they give you that answer?
Well, I think you set it up into your upfront contract, and like I'm working in the commercial space, so our deals run pretty quickly. But the farther up market, I think it changes. So I can only speak to it from the aspect of as a commercial rep selling to small business sales leaders. But it's something that you say, hey, can I propose an agenda for this call? I'm sure you have some questions for me about Gong and how we work, and I have some questions for you about your business. I mean, ultimately, the objective of this call is for us to figure out if there's a business case for you to continue an evaluation. If after what we've learned today makes sense for us to continue that conversation, I'd also like to ask you some questions about how your company's purchased software in the past, something like that, but better. But something like that you can bake into the upfront contract, and then they say, yeah, like if it makes sense, if what we learned today in today's conversation makes sense for us, then of course the next step would then be to talk about how you evaluate software, because then you're going to move into the evaluation process. And then you can get it all out on the table.
Cool. So normally what we do on B2B Tonight is we stagger people. Sarah, you're hanging out. You're going to be here. You can pepper in some commentary and stuff too. But I want to also give some chance for you guys to also pick the brain and talk with Shikha Bindra, who works at DocuSign. She's a senior manager of, I'm great at doing bios, obviously. So she's senior manager of market development at DocuSign. She helped build the Canadian team there, which is insane. And we're going to talk to her about that. We're going to talk about prospecting in Canada because there's some rules and stuff that are different there. I actually met her originally when she was, I think, an AE at Vidyard many years ago, and like very early AE. Really excited about this. So this is going to be magical. Everyone say hi to Shikha Bindra. What's up, Shikha? I'll make sure you unmute, by the way.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So have you and Sarah ever met before? Is this like a first time? Have we spawned like a budding friendship here that we didn't know would exist?
Correct.
Well,
yes.
I just sent Sarah a connection request because I want to be involved in all this content and see what she's posting, because I'm a big fan of the Gong research that's published on the blog post, and I use that for a lot of my training and enablement with all of our new hires and continued conversations about cold calling, because surprise, it's the only thing we can do in Canada. So it's really helpful for us.
Yeah, it's kind of the perfect crew for this. So one of the things that we're going to talk about that I've been studying, I talk to a lot of unicorn companies, obviously, for like research and for putting content out for you guys. One of the things that I'm noticing is it seems like as you get more and more up market too, especially, companies are leaning more and more on cold calling today. And I wanted to have Shikha on because if you think about what your team's doing, you guys are very, very heavy cold calling as opposed to email, right?
Yeah, 100%. Being in Canada, we're very limited to what we can do in our outreach strategy. We can't email people unless they've opted into us emailing them. And being brand new to market and DocuSign as of the last 2 years, we haven't built up that brand awareness enough to have a ton of opted in contacts. So majority of our outreach is phone calls. And doing that, it's been very heavy pounding the phones. And it's funny because you think in a pandemic, people are working from home and you probably won't get a lot of connects. But with great data integrity of a lot of different tools we found, we're able to get people's cell phones, and people are appreciating the phone calls because I think they're kind of lonely at home and miss having those conversations. So phones have been such a great channel for us and continues to be such a great channel. And when we look at our connect rates, we're getting those 10, 12, 13% connect rates a day, which is exciting to see, especially in a pandemic.
By the way, I just want to set the record straight that we did not coach her to say things about the importance of data integrity and quality. You did not receive payment for that. That has nothing to do with LeadIQ. It had nothing to do with that. In fact, let's change the subject. We're not going to talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. So you guys get to connect. One of the things that you've done is you also like coach a lot of reps and stuff too. By the way, guys, if you're seeing this screen flickering, we're actually doing some thunderstorms in our area. So if you have some technical difficulties or lagging, bear with us. We'll jump back in and try and save the day. But so one of the questions I want to ask you is how do you set up a team? How many people do you have cold calling in Canada? And how the hell do you get them to all say the same stuff, but customize and like, how do you coach them? How do you even build that as a unicorn company?
Oh, that's a big question. So when I first started at DocuSign, my goal was hire 20 people as quickly as possible. And my life was hire. And my hiring strategy was I was actually hiring more junior AEs from smaller startups or BDRs and SDRs from other companies that knew what they were doing from how to use their tools, the tech stack, and also how to just go about B2B prospecting. But what we would layer in our training and enablement is how to do it in the DocuSign way. And at DocuSign Canada, we reach out to literally any industry, any organization, in any department. So as you can imagine, there's just so much enablement that goes on behind the scenes and talk tracks, because that's what makes us stand out the most. We need to be able to differentiate reaching out to a manufacturing company and their HR department versus a tech company and their HR department. So when we're coaching on 30 different industries and 10 different profiles and personas, a lot of it is using a talk track approach. And a lot of mock calling, a lot of creating scripts or upfront contract dialogues. And we actually used a lot of Jay Barrows as well when it came to writing one-liners or one-hit punches just to help with opening up that dialogue and getting someone's attention. And that was where we started. And as we scale, we now have soon to be 40 MDRs at DocuSign Canada prospecting and calling into all segments, from SMB, so companies that are 5 to 120 people, all the way to large enterprise, which is 2 billion in revenue plus for us. So think about large banks and very large conglomerates. So covering all the bases.
So let's tackle this with Sarah a little bit too, just to make it a little fun, and we'll go back to you on this, Shikha. Sarah, on your end, how do you open a cold call? Like, you're still an AE cold calling. Do you do things differently than you did as an SDR, or is it identical?
Almost identical, especially opening the cold call. I think SDR, you're just so focused on like trying to get someone to take that meeting. Like, no, you really have to take the meeting. Where sometimes your judgment is clouded by emphasis on meeting, especially if I listen to my early cold calls and I'd ask for a meeting instead of trying to actually understand and handle an objection. So the way I open up a cold call is, hey, Ryan, it's Sarah Brazier with Gong.io on a recorded line. How have you been? And that's how I open a cold call. And then when you get to the objection handling part, it's more, I just focus way more on answering questions or answering and asking questions, and just almost use it as an opportunity to qualify in or out, instead of just like be like, but you should really take that meeting though, because it's good for you.
How do you coach reps, Shikha, for objections? Because you guys are all over the place, probably, right? Like you're selling to banks, manufacturing, B2B, B2C, like all kinds of random things are coming up on your end. What do you do to arm reps with the right objection handling stuff?
It's literally every industry. So it's actually funny. Sarah mentioned the opener that I got off the Gong blog post that we actually introduced in our training. The how have you been is being so key for us. And it opens up calls so much better than, hey, is this a bad time? Or whatever the generic ones that I used when I was an SDR like 5-6 years ago. But when we're thinking about objection handling, I often have coached my MDRs that an objection isn't necessarily a no. And the objections that we get across all the industries are pretty much the same. I don't have budget. I don't have time. I'm not the right person. Reach out to me in a couple months. This is not a priority. It doesn't necessarily change based on the industry and persona we're going after. It's just how we tackle it is really applying our industry knowledge and our understanding of the persona to really go back at it. So I don't have time for something like this is a very common one where we recognize that we're calling someone out of the blue and we're trying to push for at least a setup call later in the week or in that day, and we give a little bit of a tidbit of why we actually reached out. So, hey, I don't have time for something like this. Do you mind if I actually take 30 seconds to explain why I called? And if it makes sense to set up a call later on to chat further, happy to do so. And if not, no hard feelings. Or I don't have budget for something like this. This is the first call. I'm not asking for your credit card, right? Like, we really need to emphasize the point that this is a conversation and not an evaluation just yet. And our role here is just to understand, is there a potential use case or a pain point that we can help solve? And if so, give you the right information to equip you to be able to have that dialogue and implement something like this, whether it's in the next few weeks, next few months, or next few quarters. So really pushing back and tackling those uniquely, but adding that industry layer of knowledge, especially when someone says, I'm not the right person. I sure as hell hope that the MDR called the right person, because typically we're reaching out to the same general profiles that we know are the right people: sales, HR, legal, finance, IT. And we know why we're reaching out to personas like that. So that's where we use our Jay Barrows training to really emphasize why we're calling. Like, VP of sales says, I'm not the right person. Well, we know as a VP of sales, you probably should be looking at something like DocuSign. So we layer in, well, actually, I work with a lot of other VPs of sales, and they've seen a lot of value with DocuSign because it helps with their turnaround time of contracts. It helps them with visibility and seeing where their contracts are at. And also it helps with just understanding what's coming in and what's not when it comes to quarter ends or year ends. So you would be the right person to talk to. Does this resonate with you? And being able to push back.
So I have a question. Yeah.
That's just insane.
I have a question. You have a lot of, different reps, a lot of different areas that you're reaching out to, but like company size is and how big those companies is a really big thing too, as well. How different are the conversations your reps are having with those small to medium sized businesses compared to those Fortune 500 companies? Like, do you start them differently? Do you have completely different pitches? Are you reaching out to the same people?
That's a great question. I think there is a very different approach based on the size of the organization. When you're reaching out to small and medium-sized businesses, you can go to the top. They're not large enough organizations where there's levels and levels of people that you need to navigate through or that need to necessarily be involved in a decision-making process. So you can go to the C-levels, the VPs and directors and get to your yeses and nos fairly quickly. But when we're going to an enterprise level business, these are, $2 billion in revenue plus, we want to have more ammo under our belt. So the coaching that we give to our team is reach out to the managers, reach out to the directors, use those to gather information. They're not going to be the ones you set up for next steps with your AEs, but those are the people that are going to give you insight and information to help you get that meeting with that VP or that C-level to then bring to your account executive. And those are the conversations our account executives want. They want those large org-wide conversations. But when we actually get them, there's a lot of work that went on behind the scenes to get to that point. We need to understand what's going on. What are the challenges? What are the pain points that the actual people affected by this challenge is? And how do we use that to actually go and tackle those conversations then head on with the VPs and C-levels?
One of the things that I did, because I was an enterprise SDR for the majority of my time when I was sitting in the SDR seat at Gong, and I read quarterly earnings reports. And I would go, and my outreach was, if I wrote an email, which nobody's answering emails right now. So yeah, cold call is the way. But be like, your CEO's words, not mine. That's the email that I'm sending out. But I literally would call people up and I'd be like, hey, yeah, I listened to your latest quarterly earnings report. Your CEO said blah, blah, blah is a priority. Considering the fact that you do X, Y, and Z according to your LinkedIn profile, I thought it might make sense to reach out about what we do here at Gong. But I'll pause there. Like, have you ever heard of us before? And like, that would always start a really great conversation. And then from there, I would get their take on whatever the initiative that the CEO or CFO talked about in the quarterly earnings report, and I'd add it to my ammo list. And I'd have a shared Excel spreadsheet with my account executive where it's just constantly dropping in all of these tidbits around why it's a great time for them to evaluate or buy or why it isn't. But I definitely called lower level people, but if you want to get to the, VP or director faster, the hack is to go into the quarterly earnings report or their 10K, because then you've got the business initiative right there. It's right in front of you, especially if you sell to sales leaders like I do. Like, revenue is the way that publicly traded companies continue to exist. So they're going to talk about it the whole time in those calls. And then also looking at like the investor relations questions. Like, anytime an investor has a question at the end of those calls, man, that was like the juiciest, because they're always calling out like the hole in the plan that the CEO just described. And they're like, how are you going to handle this issue? Ooh, that was like juicy. I just grabbed that, and then boom, that's my next email. That's my next cold call.
I love that. That's so smart.
So it can be worth it just to go straight to the highest person you can possibly find, and as long as you have the data and research to back it up.
Yeah,
100%.
sometimes. Yeah. There's this one time where I was looking at this company, and there was a guy who was an individual contributor who used Gong at his last organization and downloaded a lot of our content. And obviously I saw all of his content downloads. So I hit him up on LinkedIn and I was like, hey man, I noticed you download a ton of Gong's content. I'm curious, like, if you could give me your 2 cents on if it would make sense for your company to evaluate Gong. He's like, yeah, we need it super desperately. Here's why. He told me all the stakeholders. He told me their biggest competitors. He told me all the trickle-down initiatives that are affecting him in his job. And then I built out sequences around the things that he told me. And then I sent it to the president of the company. The president read the email because I name dropped 2 of their biggest competitors in my subject line, who also are Gong customers. She forwarded it to their VP of sales operations, and the VP of sales operations emailed me same day and said, I'd like a meeting. So like, it works.
That's a really great story. Do you, Sarah, on your end, so you're doing prospecting now as an AE and stuff, and you're doing more commercial, but do you ask for referrals to build pipeline too? Like, is that part of Gong's process? Like, how do they standardize that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you close a deal and you say, hey, 30% of my, pipeline comes from referrals. Like, do you have anyone that you think would benefit from leveraging Gong in your network? And they'll say yes or no. It's like that simple. And then, yeah, I mean, if I call someone and they say they're the wrong person and they really are the wrong person, I ask them for a referral. I talk to people who are individual contributors on LinkedIn all the time. And if it seems appropriate, I'll ask them for a referral to their manager or their boss. But yeah, everyone should go get referrals.
Yeah.
You're great.
Yeah. What are you doing? Get some referrals, huh?
Get
out of
some
here.
referrals.
Scram. What about you guys, Shikha? Do you guys do referrals? Well, I assume you kind of have to, because you're navigating through phone trees and stuff in Canada, right?
Yeah, we see that a lot in Canada. Navigating those phone trees is key in getting just live transfers. If we're already connected with someone and we know they're not the right person, they've told us time and time again, asking who that right person is, or if someone's just left the organization, who's their replacement? Who hired them and backfilled them? Can you transfer us to them? And often or not, in our small and medium-sized businesses, they do live transfer us to the right person, or at least get us the name of the right person, because they're small enough businesses where they know who might be that right person to reach out to. So it's been a super useful tool.
I have a quick question too, because I know usually when I was working as a making 180 dials a day. So I was on the phone all day, every day, 180 dials plus. And a lot of my connections, I would have to purposely call wrong people to get in front of the wrong people. Like, I know it may be a little bit taboo now because this was like a while ago, but does if you're calling into these large organizations and, we might not have somebody's phone number and they're the ultimate decision maker, like, how are you able to get them on the phone eventually?
That's a big question. I think that's always a challenge when you don't have an extension, or the data provider you have doesn't give you the extensions. You can't email them, so you can't hope that an out of office responder gives you a direct phone number or anything like that. So navigating those phone trees and going to an operator, you can't keep doing that if you're calling the same account and you're calling 10 people in that company. You can't just keep going to the operator. So using the other phone tree options are great. I mean, I've never really seen an MDR dial the wrong extension or just make up an extension and try that out. I mean, I'm curious to see, John, if that's something that's worked for you in the past or how you navigated that.
It has worked for me in the past. I haven't done it in a very long time, but it used to work better when I would call into HR to get a transfer to like the CISO or the CIO because they think they're in trouble or something like that. But I don't know if any other tactics that.
I got a tip I can give a little bit. So I used to navigate phone trees and like, you remember back in the day they'd have phone. I don't know if either of you guys remember this. Maybe I don't know if they're still like this, but we're mainly calling cell phones, so I don't really deal with phone trees anymore. But back in the day when we used to call phone trees, they'd have a dial by name directory, so you could put in a couple letters or say a couple letters, and it would give you a list of names, and you'd hit the number for the person that you wanted to talk to. And I remember I used to put in I'd pick the name, and sometimes I get routed. Let's say I was prospecting someone named Trevor. It would route me to the wrong person named Trevor. But I'd be like, oh, so I got to talk to, I guess I'm talking to the wrong Trevor. I got to talk to the other Trevor. Do you know him? Do you guys have like Trevor offs? Like I used to make jokes like who could out Trevor the other Trevor and stuff. And like, if they knew each other, I would be like, hey, real quick, but what are they like? Like, what are they like do you know them well? Like, what are they into? And like, you can sometimes get a couple nuggets that might be something that I'm into. And then I can bring up that thing for personalization on the cold call. Since you already did the dial and got the connect. So like, I'll give you an example. I remember once I did a phone tree, I talked to the wrong person, but they were like, he's into CrossFit and triathlon stuff. He trains like crazy. And at the time I was just starting to go to the gym and like work out and try and do stuff. And I remember I brought that up on the cold call and I ended up getting the meeting afterward because I like didn't just talk about like, hey, Dine can help you with managed DNS. Like I didn't just jump into the sales pitch there and stuff. So like, finding that common ground can be useful if you're like, instead of just asking who the right person is, okay, I'm going to hang up on you. You're useless to me. Don't do that. Like be nice to the person. Be like, hey, what are they like? What are they into? Find out some intel about like, not just the business stuff, but also the personal a little bit. If they know them, like, just like, yeah, I just want to see if we have anything in common. Like you're not a bad person for doing that.
Especially this day and age when people are calling cell phone numbers, what happens a lot is, every once in a while, rarely you might get somebody's brother or sister or relative on the phone. You could do the same thing with them and they might even tell them about it and they'll be happy to pick up your call.
Yeah. Like
you ever make those cold calls and you get someone's kid because you called their house phone? That was
yep.
That was always fun conversations when I was prospecting.
What do you do? Do you trade your reps on that, Shikha? What do you do? What do you have your reps do?
It's hard not to like laugh in that situation because they're like, is this your mom or dad's name? And they're, they're shy and they don't know what to do. And you can hear them kind of yelling at their parent in the background that there's someone on the phone for them and hope that they can get the phone over to them and not hang up the phone in between. But it was definitely an interesting moment. Like I have so many stories of just bizarre cold calls that we've had in the past and just situations that we've picked up the phone and it's been like the most random occasions. Like, hey, I'm at a funeral. I can't talk. And it's like, why are you picking up the phone at a funeral, dude? Like, what are you doing?
Come on. Like the rules don't just, they like, you'll get mad at a cold caller for like calling you at the worst time. And it's like, well, just don't answer the phone if you're like at your divorce hearing or whatever the hell you're at. You know what I mean? Like whatever it could be. I once cold called someone, I remember when I was at Dine, who was like, I called them, it was a home number. I called them and they were no longer at the company. They hadn't updated their LinkedIn yet. And the person was like going through like the 13-step AA program. And I guess had lost their job because of their drinking and stuff. And like, I legit talked to the guy for like 30 minutes. My manager was yelling at me because I didn't want to hang up on the guy. He was telling me his life story and stuff on the call. And I was really nice to him. And by the end of the call, I had the complete org chart of who he used to work with, who the decision makers were, who I needed to talk to, and his old boss's phone number. And I got all that stuff from just talking to this guy about like AA and alcohol and like the steps and I'm not into that stuff, but like I know people that have been. So like I just brought up those stories that I heard from other people. So like it's a really good idea to link this stuff. And I think that like when you get to a bigger company, this is a question I want to ask both of you. You both are working at companies now that are pretty much household names in our spaces. everybody has used DocuSign, whether you're signing a mortgage or gone to the bank or contracts if you work in sales. Most people have heard of Gong and revenue intelligence and that whole space. What's it like to sell at a company where everybody knows who you are already? Let's start with Sarah and then we'll go to Shikha.
It's great.
Is it like, what do you talk about? Because you can't be like, hey, have you heard of Gong? We can help you with XYZ. Like, what do you do instead? Because they've already heard Gong at some point, right? They've already interacted with them.
Yeah, well, so number one, when I first started working at Gong, nobody had heard of us. So they'd be like, Gong, what? Huh? You Gong, like the thing that you hit when you close a big deal. Oh, okay, great. And then the Gong Show, get like someone in a certain age bracket talks about the Gong Show every time. Not everybody during my time during cold calling knew what Gong was, and still, like, we're breaking into different verticals and different industries. So when you cold call those people, they don't know. They don't know what you are. There's always someone who doesn't know. There are always people living under rocks who just don't know. But it is nice when I do call people and they do know what Gong is, then they just have questions for me. And then their assumptions, I can challenge them or inform them differently. And that typically helps to pique their interest and get them on the phone faster. So I think, like, selling at a company where people know who you are, it's pretty great. It's pretty great.
Do you have to find new talk tracks though? Like if someone's like, look, we've talked to Gong, we did a meeting last year, it didn't fit. Like, what do you do in that case?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that you say is the thing that everybody in SaaS says, which is like, listen, like a year in SaaS is 10 years in any other industry. Like, the reality is that the Gong that you evaluated a year ago is different, and the problems that I imagine you have today are probably different. Like, that is the life of working in software. So would it be totally out of this world for us to have a brief conversation? If it still doesn't make sense, that's fine. I'll call you in a year from now. But considering whatever the triggers are for the reason why I called in the first place, your current growth, your new product release, your new CEO, this whatever Crunchbase says, like, I think it might make sense to pick up the conversation where we left off.
What do you think, Shikha? What do you guys do to deal with everyone knowing who DocuSign is already?
I think the biggest hump sometimes is, oh, DocuSign, I don't need that. I already know what it is, don't need it. And navigating those conversations, because I often find that when we call people and they recognize DocuSign, they've already made that decision that they might not need that solution. So we're already starting on the defense. And while it's great to have that brand recognition and knowing that we don't necessarily need to do all the selling up front and start with value, it kind of limits us sometimes to not be able to pitch the value of something like DocuSign, because people think, we're just an e-signature solution. While in the last few years, to Sarah's point, DocuSign and a lot of tech companies, they change their products so quickly and so much that there's a lot of things that have happened maybe the last time they've evaluated a piece of technology. So from us, we're not just e-signature anymore. We're a whole cloud solution of agreement products. So there's so many more reasons and things that we can do to help a business. And so coming into the defense, it's just a whole new navigation of just that conversation where we might take a step back and say, oh, that's great. I know you recently evaluated DocuSign. I can see on your record a couple months ago. I was reaching out because I noticed XYZ on your company page, or we're working with a lot of industries similar to yours who are now working remotely, or this new work order has come out that you need electronic XYZ about this type of form that your company is probably working through. So we need to be equipped to be able to handle that defense off the bat. It's very different though from when I worked at Vidyard, and when I'd call people and they'd say, wait, what? A vineyard? Like, are you a wine company? Like, what is Vidyard? And very, very different kind of a conversation.
It's also a great time to, as an SDR, if you know who you're calling and they've evaluated it in the past, you should have like a really good ammo question in your back pocket, because they say, oh, we evaluated a year ago, we don't need that. And then you have, well, XYZ thing that just happened. I'm curious how your blah, whatever that question is. I noticed that your sales organization grew 200% in the past 6 months. I'm curious how you're handling onboarding with the aggressive growth. And then they say, oh, we're doing XYZ thing. Oh, that's really interesting. Do you ever come across this pain point? Like, how long does it take for those new hires to actually ramp? Why does it take so long? Does it ever lead to attrition? Like, if I could show you in one call how we reduce time to productivity by, from months to weeks for some of our customers, would that be worth opening up the evaluation again? Like, you use your discovery questions to get people to say, oh, I never thought about this thing that way.
So we have a question from the audience. When cold calling personal cell phones, are you leaving voicemails? And if so, what are you saying in these voicemails? I know I never liked them, but I used to leave them. But what are you saying in your voicemails?
Let's start with Shikha on this one. Dropping the bombs.
Oh yeah.
We get callbacks on voicemails. We are a big fan of them. I think voicemails are extremely important to leave because I almost am the kind of person that if someone's cold calling me, I don't have time to pick up while I'm in a meeting, and I'm usually in meetings all day, and I'm looking for that voicemail because I want to know why I'm getting that call. And with our primarily focus being cold calling, we can't leave that channel out, even if it's not a fun thing to receive a voicemail. And a lot of people don't love getting them on their cell phones. We've actually noticed that we get callbacks. Even if it's someone saying, hey, I'm not the right person, reach out to so-and-so. It's still a callback for us and it's still effective. So 100% big proponent of voicemails. For us, the shorter the better. When I was in SDR, my voicemails would be very vague, like, hey, Shikha from Big Yard, give me a call back. Like the vaguest voicemails. And I've learned over time that some people love those and actually call back. And some people are like, no, like, why are you leaving me these vague voicemails like this? But I think the shorter the better, adding a little bit of a tidbit of why you were calling and asking for that call back, or asking if this is the right person, or asking if they could help, goes a long way.
Where do you stand, Sarah, on the voicemail debate?
Yeah, I recently just changed the way that I go about like prospecting, because first of all, I hate writing emails. I hate them so much. So I cold call first, and then if they don't pick up, I say, hey Ryan, looks like I just missed you. I'm gonna go ahead and shoot you an email. It's gonna be titled "Just left you a voicemail." You can hit me back there or give me a call back here. Oh, by the way, this is Sarah from Gong. And then I leave that voicemail, and then I send "Just left you a voicemail," and I send the reason why I was calling, whatever I was gonna say on that phone call. And then I connect with them on LinkedIn. And then I might even say like, oh, by the way, I just left you a voicemail on your phone. This is adding a face to a voice on LinkedIn. And I have booked meetings off of that. So it works.
Oh, it certainly does. All right, we have a question from Abigail Conrad in the audience. How many times is too many times to leave a voicemail? If you're going to be leaving them and they're already in your sequence, are you leaving one every time? How many times are you leaving this person a voicemail?
You guys can battle it out. I don't know.
Oh.
Either you can jump in.
I'm not leaving it every time. I mean, it depends on the sequence. I feel like I don't know the answer to the question because I don't have a data-backed answer, but I can tell you that I don't think it's cool to leave a voicemail every single time. I would think about what step they're in your sequence and how many channels you've hit them up on. And, are you using a tool that allows you to see how many email opens you have? And are they responding to you on LinkedIn? Are they just totally ignoring you? So yeah, I would say leave, like my gut says, leave 1 or 2 voicemails over the course of, your month-long sequence. And don't do it every time because that's desperate. That's so desperate.
What do you think, Shikha?
I echo that. If you're thinking about like a month-long sequence, and at least for us in Canada, we're probably calling someone maybe every few days. Leaving a voicemail would be very aggressive and almost to a point where it's just so annoying that people would probably block your number if they could. So every few times, I would say. So if it's a 7 or 8 touch point sequence, I would say maybe 2 of those should be voicemails, 2 or 3 at most. Because I think one, you could do, your opening type of voicemail where, the reason why you're reaching out. The second could be that follow-up type of voicemail in terms of, hey, just reaching back out. I left you a voicemail a couple weeks ago, or I sent you an email about so-and-so that I'd love to get your feedback on. And then that last voicemail could be, hey, I haven't heard back from you. Maybe you're not the right person. Do you mind helping me point in the right direction? Thanks for listening to my voicemail, kind of thing. And that could be your cadence when it comes to your voicemail messaging and changing it up. So you can't leave the same voicemail every single time.
What I typically recommend for voicemail is most people are looking text to voice. Like that's how they're looking at voicemail. I am, at least. I never listen to my voicemails. I look at the text, even if it's gibberish, unless it's really bad. I don't play the audio from I just look at the text. Make the first couple sentences of your voicemail about the person, and they're more likely to look through the whole thing. And then say your name last, like Sarah suggested, because their first thing they're wondering is, who's calling me? Who's this? What's going on? And if you put your name last, they'll keep hanging out for the rest of the voicemail to find out who it is. We have one more question, one word question here. Texting, yes or no?
Maybe.
There's actually more to it. So yeah, would you ever text?
Texting? What is that?
How about this? Would you ever cold text a prospect? Make it a little bit more interesting. Would you ever cold text one of your prospects?
I have. I've done it multiple times. One guy I cold texted, and he took the meeting. The other guy said, "I will never do business with your company." So, that's what I gotta say about texting. Maybe.
50%. You're good, right?
Shikha, does Canada have weird laws for texting too?
Yeah, legally we cannot send a text message unless they have opted into us. So we're out of luck there. But when I was in AE, I actually used texting a lot when it came to navigating deals, right? Like being able to have that rapport and be able to text prospects and customers that I'm working with was a great tool. So even early stage in your deal cycle, getting, sending a reminder over or saying, hey, this is Shikha, just sending you my number in case you have any questions while you're in that meeting with your VP and so on and so forth, is a big tool I used when I was in AE. And it's super helpful when you're trying to close that deal and you're on a deadline to be able to get that prospect like direct message.
Here's a bold strategy. At the end of your voicemail, tell them to shoot you a text. How about that? And you leave a number for texting. That could be a good compromise to test this out. Guys, we are at time. It's been an emotional roller coaster. I think a lot of us have learned some things about each other that we probably shouldn't have learned. Do you guys want to plug anything? I know, Shikha, you go first. I'm pretty sure you have a ton of people you're hiring, right?
Oh, yeah. We're constantly hiring, and we're hiring across all of our offices in North America. So Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, Toronto, we are hiring. We're looking for all types of sales talent, whether it's MDRs, AEs, managers as well. So if you are interested in learning more, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn.
Okay. And we'll make sure to give your LinkedIn link out. If you need it, just ping me, Ryan@leadiq.com, and I can give you the deets, but you can probably find her. Sarah, what do you want to plug? What do you got cooking?
Yeah, well, I'll echo the same thing. I mean, Gong is also hiring. So if you want to come sell Gong, I mean, that's a party. That's super awesome. Number two, something to plug is Gong's conference Celebrate is coming up. And we've got some pretty awesome sales experts who are going to be speaking. So if you are watching this, you're probably a sales nerd, I imagine. If you want to come nerd out with Gong people and listen to some great speakers, go to Celebrate. And if you want to buy Gong, hit me up because I'll sell it to you.
No shame. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. On our end, by the way, I just want to plug one more thing. Shikha's former company, Vidyard, next week, I'm going to be hanging out with Tyler Lassard, and we're going to go through some high-effort prospecting campaigns, things where I did like full production stuff to break into accounts. We're going to go through some real examples of accounts we've done that for. If you want to check that out, we will be plugging that after this in the email. There will be a recording sent out probably Monday for this. It won't be tomorrow, I don't think, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be out today. Who knows how quickly our producer can edit this stuff. You guys, thank you so much for being on. You guys are awesome. And I think this has been good. And if you have any other questions for these guys, hit me up and I can relay it back to them and ask them that stuff too. Maza, thank you as always for sporting the turtleneck and manning the chat. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Ryan.
Oh, this is so
nice. And
nice.
of course, Sarah and Shikha. I appreciate everybody here too.
Bye, guys. We'll see you later.
Shout out to Sabrina.